Thank you, Naina. May I now introduce our chairperson for this session, Professor Dr. Krishna Roy, ex-principal, Bethune College, ex-additional director, Planning and Statistics, Higher Education Department, Government of West Bengal. She is an MSc and PhD in human psychology. Apart from carrying out scientific research, she is also interested in literature. She is an essayist, short story writer in Bengali, and her number of published books, more than 20. She has notable books on biography of different women scientists. First Indian female teacher, Savitri Bai Phule, Sarala Devi Chaudhurani, and she has also analyzed the characters of women created by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. She was also the additional director of public instruction. Apart from that, she was a topper in her graduation as well as in PG level from Calcutta University. Ma'am, may I invite you to the dais?
Our first speaker for this session is Professor Choitali Moitro. Professor Moitro has been associated with teaching and publications for over 3 decades. Her area of interest is 19th century American travel literature. At present, she serves as a guest lecturer in St. Paul's Cathedral Mission College, Bethune College, and Sanskrit College and University. She has edited the book Studies in American Poetry and currently working on a book in Bengali on Durga Puja. The title of her paper is Visibility and Imagination, Calvino and Two Modern Novels. The 2 modern novels that she will focus on are Bimal Mitro's Begum Mary Bishash and Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I now invite Professor Moitro to please come and present her paper. Okay. And one more thing for the participants, you will be given 10 minutes to present your paper. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, okay.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, my sincere thanks to the organizers of this meet for allowing me to come and stand in this day, which is definitely a proud moment for me. I'm trying to present a perspective through my paper, which I call Visibility and Imagination, Calvino and Two Modern Novels. So the first bit of my paper is my paper tries to talk about the present world, which is a globalized one. And although there is a keen striving to maintain peace, harmony between the countries, and awareness of the cultural link between different people, we are actually facing problems and troubles which are taking us away from the promise of this peace and harmony. An international political order which promotes equality and a promising strong economy which can help achieve mutually beneficial communities. This can be achieved by promoting a cultural atmosphere based on the exchanges, both verbal and literary, which can enhance friendship and understanding. However, after the Cold War era, life in general has become much more multifaceted and intense, with the predicament of the individual becoming superlatively challenged, with boundaries and barriers becoming more and more fluid. This predicament has been addressed in the world of literature in different genres. Certain books which come to my mind would be Umberto Eco's On Literature, Elements of Eloquence by Mark Forsyth, or Plain Words by Ernest Gowers. And together with this, there are many other books which are similar. I'm trying to focus on one particular book, which is called 6 Memos for the Next Millennium by Italo Calvino. This book is particularly pertinent for today's discussion. It was published in 1985, and it consists of a series of lectures which Calvino was invited to deliver in Harvard. So when he was preparing the lectures, he was supposed to deliver 8 lectures, but after preparing the fifth one, he was planning to write the 6th, and in the meantime, he suddenly passed away. My focus is on the 4th lecture called Visibility. And visibility starts with the mention of Dante, and Calvino says that we are concerned with the loftier part of the imagination as distinct from the corporeal imagination. He also says that I have always sought out in the imagination a means to attain a knowledge that is outside the individual, outside the subjective. And losing this faculty is a fear which he guards us, which he warns us in this lecture. And he also tries to say, I'm not going to the textual details, but to summarize, he's trying to say that the world of print culture tries to take away our focus of imagining things. So visibility actually also includes a sense of intuitive thinking, not only what is seen through the eyes, but things which you do not see, but should be taken more seriously. To corroborate this point, I have picked up two modern novels. One is called Fahrenheit 451, which has been made into an excellent film written by Ray Bradbury. And the gist of this novel, this is a 1953 novel, and it is written with the perspective of the Red Scare, the second Red Scare and the McCarthy era. And the burning of books happened to be the main theme of this novel. The protagonist, called Guy Montag, is a very unhappy man, and he works in a sort of firehouse where his job is to burn books according to the direction of his boss. Now, while burning books, he enters many places, he is doing his job, and he finds a lady, he meets a woman who is willing to die with her books. This creates a stir in the mind of Montag, and he takes away a few books and hides them under his pillow. The plot goes on, the narrative develops, and we come to see Montag getting in touch with a professor called one Faber, Mr. Faber, Professor Faber, and they try to sort of talk on how to hide a book and to listen to a book by tearing off a few pages from that book. That book is the Bible. Okay, so what does Montag do? He's very cleverly trying to listen to the book, and reading brings a change in his personality. And according to the story, once it so happens that bombing is taking place and Montag is wading through a river. As he is wading through a river, he meets a group of people whom he has never seen, but gradually comes to know that these people do not have any names. At least they are not ready to give their names. What have they done? They have by-hearted books so that they cannot be burnt. So what is important, what is sort of very contextual to Calvino's lecture is that the by-hearting of the books is actually invisible. But this actually points out to the concept of saving a civilization as opposed to the visible burning of the books. My second novel is a Bengali novel called Begum Meri Bishwash of Bimal Mitra, a famous Bengali classic. This particular novel explores the socio-political backdrop of Bengal in times around 1757, roughly 2 centuries before the Ray Bradbury novel, which I have just sort of given the gist to you all. And this novel is written at a particular time when British rule was imposed by imprisoning the last independent Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dowla. This was possible by the vengeful steps taken by his courtiers, who were the miscreants. Now, this is a novel where the narrative finds an expression through the protagonist Morali. Morali is a simple village girl who uses her strong common sense and dedication to the king, for which she suffers the mammoth loss of the ruin of her probable contented personal life. The main friction in the narrative is the individual versus the society. And trying to run away from a reluctant marriage, Morali finds herself in Chehel Sutun, a place where countless numbers of girls are imprisoned as begums of Siraj-ud-Dowla. So Chehel Sutun and Moti Jheel, 2 places where the begums stay and the Nawab stays respectively, would be the points of visibility. My argument is, according to Calvino, visibility should be able to also include a sense of intuitiveness. And through these visible places, we come to see how Morali's mind gradually develops, and the characters who are very much part of history. Let me name at least a few: Mir Zafar, Reza Ali, Mir Qasim. All of us know these characters. All these characters are made visible and they are established according to the historical context. But in the end, when one of the only person who loved Morali dies, she's not married to this person, she's married elsewhere, Morali decides to go to the funeral pyre as a shoti. So she burns herself, she kills herself. The only thing which remains alive is her sacrifice for the sake of humanity. These are the two novels. Now finally, I conclude by saying that when we discuss the theme of peace, mention can be made of the peace theory propounded by Johan Galtung, the founder of PRIO, that is Peace Research Institute, Oslo. And in his paper of 1969, Violence, Peace and Research, he says that peace should have specific social goals and should be able to curb violence. The two novels discussed belong to two different cultures and present separate historical and social cultural backdrops. However, both in their own rights are suggestive of harmony and peace in a world which is presented with visibility only in the contrary. Thus, the importance of intuitive visibility is established, reinforced, and contextualized. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moitro, for your illuminating paper. And Begum Meri Bishash is a text that we have been hearing about since our childhood. And there's a little announcement to make for all the paper presenters. We will be felicitating you after this session because we have a paucity of time, so we can't waste time in between. Our next presenter is Bazla Omehani, who is pursuing PhD research program at National Institute of Technology, Patna, with specialization on female romantic poets under the skillful guidance of Dr. Zishan Ali, a Fulbright awardee and assistant professor of English Department of Humanities and Social Science, NIT Patna, Bihar. Her paper is on message of peace in female romantic poets. I invite the speaker to please come and make her presentation. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My greetings to all. Myself, Bazla Omehani, a research scholar at NIT Patna. Today, I am going to discuss on the topic Message of Peace in Female Romantic Poets. With the publication of lyrical ballads in 1798 was the culminating factor which began the new genre of English in English poetry in England. It remained a source of inspiration for the emerging poets to find out new approaches in English poetry that resulted in solace and reconciliation for the people of the age. The Romantic Revival had a deep interest in nature, and not as a center as a beautiful scenes, but as an informing and a spiritual influence on life. In the poetry of these poets, we could find the sense of wonder, of life seen with new sensibilities and fresh vision. These female romantic poets, they affirm the creative power of imagination like their male counterparts. We know the big giants, the big male romantic poets like William Wordsworth, Shelley, Coleridge, and etc. These female romantic poets, which I have discussed in this paper, Anna Barbauld and Charlotte Smith, their work exhibits a preference for nature in its sublime aspects, mountains, glaciers, chasms, storms, as well as a strange and exotic setting, as the male romantic poets did. But if we could see, they reject the materialist and mechanistic philosophies. These women's poets of the Romantic era, they wrote about the nature of individual self and value of individual experience. Female Romantic poets embrace home affection, family, and social relationship. They portray personal interest into a desire for the good of one's family or the entire community rather than on self-interest. If we look at the theme of peace, the peace in a harmony, Anna Barbauld, she is among the people of women of peace. War, according to her, she states in one of her essays, war is a state in which all our feelings and our duties suffer a total and a strange inversion. A state in which instead of cultivating, we destroy. Instead of building, we pull down. A state in which we drink the tears and feed upon the misery of our fellow creature. This line has been taken from Anna Barbauld, A Voice of the Enlightenment. And Charlotte Smith, she explores the limits of the tragic emotion of pity and sadness. Her poem, The Immigrants, also dedicated to the William Cooper, is a good model for the use of poetic style. If we look at how she discussed the point like isolated sensibility and defining an arena for desolatory contemplation. If we look at these lines, let's nature commoners enjoy the common gifts of heaven. Barbauld speaks of general women rights. Here rights belong to the word like peace and the theme like peace and harmony. These downtrodden by their male counterparts, these female poets, they were the competitors and they were the oppressed human being. They fight for liberty which was required by the nature's law. Anna Barbauld, her period was from 1743 to 1825. She demonstrated her support for a slow social revolution. Her publication of Epistle to William Wilberforce shows the support for the abolitionist movement. She was the follower of the cult of sensibility, turning primary flaw of femininity as a positive quality. She contrasts the feminine sensibility with the masculine rationality. Her deftly includes both the philosophic mind and compassion. Her poem, a poem Peace and Shepherd, in this poem she calls for the peace from bower and hall and palace driven. To these lone wilds I flee, my name is Peace, and I love the court. O shepherd, shelter me. She is calling for peace. She wants that people should shelter her and she should be safe and she should be secured. Another line from the same poem itself, I cannot shelter thee. That means the people cannot save her, but there should be peace should be installed. Another poem which I have discussed in this paper, The Caterpillar, in which in the poem she also calls the helplessness thing, I cannot harm thee now. She is also calling for peace and how people cannot find peace. Like the line shows, depart in peace, thy little life is safe. If you are departing from peace, that then you will become safe when you will be dead. Noted the silver line that streaks thy black, and peaceful villages rolls dreadful on the victor shouts triumph. He enjoys the roar of cannon and clang of arms. Another poet which I have discussed in my paper, Charlotte Smith, her period from 1749 to 1806. Her poetries demonstrate a nuanced reaction to the imposition of this hierarchically gendered aesthetic. She expresses the painful reality of the divided and de-enfranchised sensibility. Her poem To Tranquility, the title itself shows the word tranquility, which is equivalent to peace in this tumultuous sphere. For thee, infant, how seldom art thou find tranquility. While feminist poetry is always accompanied by a struggle, it has also a calm beauty. The lines, the words like nature and these things, the background of the poem shows they are calling out the nature, but they are finding these female poets, they seldom take up arms for their struggle. They do not talk of violence and death as their poems are peaceful. They want peace and invite people to become part of humanity. Equality and justice here mean peace. Women hardly make their demands by taking up arms. They are not taking up arms, rather than they take the literature or the poem or through their work of art, the calling of peace. There might be exception, but generally women stand for peace like beautiful doves. The beauty and calmness of women bring peace. Also feminist poetry, these female romantic poets, their poetry brings peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bajla Umehani. We now move on to the next speaker. He is Dr. Muhammad Ijaz Alam. He holds the, he had, he is presently the Dean of Faculty of Humanities and Head of the Department of English at Maulana Mazharul Haq Arabic and Persian University, Bihar. Dr. Alam's international exposure is evident from his tenure as an assistant professor of English at the University of Science and Technology in Sanis, Republic of Yemen. He has also exercised several significant administrative roles in the capacity of Inspector of Colleges, Controller of Examinations, Register and Proctor at Maulana Mazharul Haq Arabic and Persian University, Patna, Bihar. The realm of Dr. Alam extends to the publication of the books like R.K. Narayan and the Inhabitants of Malgudi, 5 post-colonial novelists of the 20th century, A Critical Perspective, and Unshackled Spirits, Ideologies and Journeys of Inspiring Freedom Fighters. Sir, please come and present your paper.
Thank you very much. Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, the topic of my today's presentation is the meaning of peace in an eclectic poetry. Several questions may be asked out of this presentation, but before coming to it, I would like to just say that when the whole of the world is crying for peace, in this 21st century, I have a poet, and her name is Fatima Asghar. She has the collection of book, If They Come For Us. This very collection gives the message of peace and harmony deliberately in a very eclectic manner. And the style she has adopted, it is also very unique one. That is why, while going through her poems, I just wanted to have my own expression on own experiences of just selecting the topic. So the meaning that of peace that she has defined in her work, in her poems, are of very different nature. Let me just begin with how she is going to just pass on the message of peace. When we come to the poem, If They Come For Us, this is how the poem begins. These are my people, and I find them on the straight and shadow, though any wild, old wild, my people, my people, my people. A dance of strangers in my blood, the old woman's sari dissolving to wind, bindi, a new moon on her forehead. I claim her, my kin and sue, the star of her to my breast. This is how her poems have been written. So Fatma Asghar has just tried to sensitize the very consummate feeling of harmony and peace in her poems. Here the poet has adopted a very novice style. This is a style which is rarely found in any piece of poetry in modern poetry. See, the topic and the background she has selected for her work is partition. So when we come to the partition, the very poem, the partition, that has also the very different expression how this partition has been defined. See, this is what the poet has written. 1945, my grandfather steps off a train in Jammu and Kashmir, drinks pani from the Muslim fountain. My grandfather teaches all the children in the village. And then she comes to 1947. A man sees a girl crying as she begs for water. He stares for a while and then lights her on fire. Then 1946, a woman registers to vote and then registers her grandfather, long dead. Then after 1947, summer in Bihari market, there is nothing but sag and edible flowers. Then after 1993, summer in New York City, I am four, sitting in a patch of grass by my path mark. Then again in the experiences she has collected from 1947, she writes, 1947, this is how the poem begins. A man attacks Jinnah on the street. Another man spits on Nehru. My family died for your dream, they say. Bring me back my family, bring me back my family. This is how the experience she has collected in her poems. So the very meaning of peace can be traced out in her outpourings. Fatma Asghar is a diasporic poet. She was born and brought up in Jammu and Kashmir. Then after she settled in USA. Asghar orchestrates a complex narrative across a standard bingo in microaggression bingo, while critiquing the stock language used by colonialist countries by implying a mad leap from in August 1947. And then the experience that she has expressed again in the poem Partition, she wrote 7 poems and the very title is Partition. In one of the poems she writes, your father was fluent in 4 languages. You are illiterate in the tongues of your father. You are Muslim until it is too dangerous. You are safe until you are alone. You are American until the tower falls, until there is border on your back. These are the truncated voice that the poet has gathered in course of her experiences of partition, perturbed for peace and harmony. Again in the poem Partition, she writes, refrigerator, sink and TV with on auntie. A. She sends us the ration through the day and we stay separate, not allowed to cross IM10. Here the trauma begins after partition, and these divisions did not find laurel to the people of United India. Rather, their destiny was assigned misery, agony, and devastation. Now, the poem, the title after the partition of Pakistan into 2 parts, Bangladesh and Pakistan, she just given the title Partition, and this is how she comes out to speak. It was 2000 and we know nothing of history. When we went to Nabila's house, we would all shout, Bangladesh, Bangladesh, all my people from Bangladesh. The year 2000 was the 29th year after the independence of Bangladesh. It was also the 5th year of the first term of government of Sheikh Hasina. This is the period of a strife among the political parties. Continued rapid urbanization and globalization will influence the socio-economic and cultural activities of the country in this very decade. And when it comes to 1947, the very title is 15th August 1947. She writes, please do not forget to surrender your plural noun and ration card. Noun and noun. At the proper noun railway station, we wish you peace, and noun and slogan. The independence of India at the midnight of 15th August 1947 was indeed a celebration, but this victory gave several question marks for both the countries who fought for sovereignty. There had been several socio-religious issues that is known to all. And then now she starts praying in one of the poems, and the very title is My God partitions sunlight into many rays. They dance partition on the sidewalk. Again the trees my skin. The best example of eclectic poetry can be traced out here. See, this eclectic poetry has been just given this new nomenclature to this style of writing poetry because she has been influenced by Mr. Cousin, who had been a French philosopher, and he used to give this nomenclature of from idealism to socialism. So let us now come to conclude this very part of the poem, and this is how this poem, the very collection of Fatima Asghar, can be concluded in this very line, the beginning line which I quoted quite in the beginning. These are my people, and I find them on the street and shadow. Through any while and while, my people, my people. These words of poem, if they come for us, are really replete with a message of harmony and peace in a wide supremacistic world. This is a celebration of humanity, offering readers a message of salvation through solidarity. I think that if she is prescribed on syllabus, she must be just extending the very views of peace and harmony. Thank you very much. Any question, please? That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Alam. Our next paper presenter is Oindrila Bhattacharya. Oindrila Bhattacharya is an assistant professor of English at Regent Education and Research Foundation Group of Institutions, Barakpur. She has done her MA and MPhil in English from the University of Calcutta and is about to get her doctoral award from Vidyasagar University. Oindrila, please come and read your paper, present your paper. And the title of our paper is The Repressed Returns, Reading No Longer at Ease from the Perspective of Nichiren Daoshin's Buddhism.
Good afternoon to all. The title has already been read out. So what I have attempted is I have just summarized some of the important aspects that I'm going to speak about because it's unnecessary, I think, to read out the full paper, and it will always surpass the time. Okay, so Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism is an Oriental Kamakura period school and is a branch of Mahayana Buddhism. In order to relieve the people of their sufferings, Shakyamuni Buddha about 3000 years ago has preached among them and has later on revealed that the real purpose of his emergence is the preaching of the Lotus Sutra. 2000 years after his demise, when the power and benefits of his teachings are lost in the latter day of the law, that is, in the present times, Nichiren Daishonin, a Buddhist monk of the 13th century, emerges as the true Buddha with his mission to quote unquote save all human beings suffering in this Saha world. Saha world, as per this Buddhist philosophy, is the mundane world, which is infested with greed, earthly desires, and illusions. He too has preached among them the importance of the Lotus Sutra through Nammyaho Renge Kyo, that is, quote unquote, devotion to the mystic law of the Lotus Sutra, as the highest and the most effective means to relieve them from their sufferings, angst, pain, chaos, and so on and so forth. This is because, as pointed out by him, the Lotus Sutra emphasizes on the importance of human revolution and sets examples as to how, through normal daily activities, can a person transform the self, both within as well as without, and how traits like compassion, self-restraint, and attempts to harmonize can really usher in that revolution, thereby effectively spreading happiness among the other people of the prevalent era, the era of the latter day of the law, both locally as well as globally. That is, both in this Jambudipa as well as the world at large. Nammyaho Renge Kyo is a pledge to never give in to challenges and to win over one's sufferings, and also to help others reveal this law in their own lives and achieve happiness, happiness both to self as well as for the others. This paper of mine aims to read the novel No Longer at Ease by the Nigerian literary titan Chinua Achebe from the perspective of Buddhism propagated by Nichiren Daishonin. The paper is a humble attempt to move towards a better life condition by psychoanalytically looking back at a few causes behind the tragic conversion of the protagonist, Obi Okonko, leading to his catastrophic fall in the dawn of the new Igbo society as a multicultural milieu. The paper actually aims to seek a way of evading such a fall, thereby also trying to project how Achebe has carefully problematized his text only to hint a solution via a high life condition. Like Things Fall Apart, its sequel, that is the 1960 novel No Longer at Ease, too witnesses the tragic fall of its hero, Obi Okonko, that is the grandson of Ogbuefi Okonko of Things Fall Apart, and the son of Noi, who is known by the name Isaac after his conversion to Christianity. I guess you are aware of that if you have gone through the novel. As per Freudian concept, there are three levels in human mind: the unconscious, the preconscious, and the conscious. The conscious, depicting reason and logical thought, is generally controlled by superego, which represents conscience or social morality. The unconscious, acting as the storehouse of all unfulfilled desires and traumatic past incidents that are repressed, is driven by id, which depicts irrational thought. The preconscious lies between the conscious and unconscious and is guided by ego, that is the I of a person. This ego, which depicts a somewhat coherent organization of mental processes, is expected to balance between superego's ideologies and id-induced desires. Nichiren's philosophy urges the revolution of this ego, which through such traits as compassion, self-restraint, and attempts to harmonize, can achieve not only the happiness of the self, but also of so many others. Obi's failure is due to the inability of his ego to balance his superego and id, and thereby his failure to harmonize his private life with his public life, his idealism as a Western educated elite with his origin and the contemporary Nigerian society. As a result, he falls a prey to ambiguities which have given birth to his indecisiveness, and he commits blunders, gets alienated from his family, from Clara, the girl who had been his love interest, from his friends, from Umuofians, and also from the Nigerian society, which is now made up of an odd combination of Umuofians who still stick to some of the old traditional values, the newly Western educated indigenous elites, and the Europeans. Obi thereby gets fragmented as he is rejected by his family and by Clara at the microcosmic level, and finally by the Nigerian society at the macrocosmic level. His Western education has given him a sort of idealism which is totally out of tune with the then Nigerian society, infested with corruptions, as corruption appears to be an art that is to be mastered without getting caught, something which Obi cannot accept. But the idealism which is imposed on him by his Western education is also not in tune with the situation of England. And we find him reminding himself that England has been quite corrupt not very long ago. Moreover, as he goes on to hurt the traditional folks of his tribe who have helped him get his overseas education, he imposes on himself an added financial burden to repay his scholarship loan at the earliest. He is thus now exposed to a tremendous pressure because beside repaying the £800 which the Lagos branch of the Umuofia Progressive Union has lent for his education overseas, he has to purchase a very expensive flat to maintain and display a standard of living, quote unquote, appropriate to his European status instead of exercising self-restraint. He also has to send money home to finance the education of his brothers. As a result of all these pressures, his ego gives way and he loses his integrity. Moreover, his relationship with Clara is strongly opposed by his parents, friends, as also his countrymen who, though are evolving, are still adamant on some of their old traditional beliefs that Clara, being quote unquote an Osu, cannot be Obi's wife. Obi in this case too fails to retain his grounds, just as he fails to show compassion to Clara, who now, pregnant with Obi's baby, has to undergo a dangerous abortion. Obi quite naturally gets cut off from Clara too. Utterly demoralized, he now succumbs to the various temptations prevailing around him and finally accepts bribes to repay his debts. He is soon arrested on the charge of accepting bribes and is sent to trial. Ironically, at the end of the novel, we find that at the end of the trial, Obi is condemned by the Umuofia Progressive Union not because he has accepted bribes, but because he has been caught accepting them, and more so as the amount of the bribe has not been a hefty one. As is apparent in the following lines, I quote from the text. The president said it was a thing of shame for a man in the senior service to go to prison for £20. He repeated, £20, spitting it out. We have a saying that if you want to eat a toad, you should look for a fat and juicy one. Unquote. However, Obi could have avoided this fall simply through his human revolution with self-restraint and compassion, thereby also setting himself as an example as a senior official for his erring Nigerian society, and he could have transferred his land into a better place, oozing happiness. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oindrila, and how I wish we could have a question answer session, because I think by this time the listeners are having quite a number of questions on their minds, but unfortunately we are having to move fast. And our next speaker is Ritom Dotto. Ritom hails from the vibrant city of Kolkata, West Bengal. He embarked on his academic journey with a graduation from Vivekananda College, and then further honed his literary passion through postgraduate studies at the prestigious Department of English, University of Delhi. Ritom's intellectual pursuits are characterized by a deep fascination with subjects such as gender studies, postmodernism, posthumanism, psychoanalytic studies, Indian graphic novel, and cultural studies. A literary enthusiast, he has already published multiple literary journals and short stories with a strong desire to contribute even more to the world of literature. Ritam's paper is titled Interrogating Cultural Harmony in Rushdie's Victory City, a study through the lenses of historical amnesia and interpolation. Over to you, Ritam.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Ritam Datta, and in today's lecture, I will be talking about. Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm audible? Okay. So, in today's presentation, I will be talking about Rushdie's Victory City, and I will be talking about this from the lenses of historical amnesia by Frederick Jameson and interpolation by Louis Althusser. So, let us begin with the historical background of the novel. Victory City's historical significance lies in the connections to the Vijayanagar Empire, which was established in 1336 and governed three major linguistic regions, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. So Rushdie draws inspiration from this rich history to craft the enchanting narrative of Victory City. The Vijayanagar Empire, which eventually collapsed in 1646, becomes a symbol of religious syncretism. So we all know that Rushdie loves to write about magic realism. So he kind of infused this magic realism with historical novel and created a new thing called historiographic metafiction. So according to Linda Hutchison in Poetics of Postmodernism, works of historiographic metafictions are those well-known and popular novels which are both intensify self-reflexive and yet paradoxically also lay claims to historical events and personages. But the problem here is that the central protagonist of Rushdie's Victory City is not actually eccentric. She is the most dominating person and also happens to be the most important protagonist who actually develops and changes the course of the action. So Rushdie plays with that thing. And let's talking about Pampa Campana, who is the protagonist and who actually changes everything. A second, yes. At the age of 9, Pampa Campana's mother and all the other women of her village self-immolate following their husband's death in the battle. Following the tragedy, a goddess called Pampa Campana enters Pampa's body and gave her supernatural abilities. And it is through that abilities Pampa Campana actually manages to create an entire city from nothing. And what happens after that is that when Pampa Campana creates those people and this entire city, people are not actually working in a particular order. There were chaos and kind of a harmony broke down. But everything get resolved after Pampa Campana whispers something in their ears. And it is these whispers which is my actual topic is on, because these whispers are not just merely memories, because these memories are not actually coming from a omnipotent place, but these memories are actually Pampa Campana's own childhood memories, and kind of Pampa Campana manipulating the people and kind of doing things what she actually wanted to do. Now let's talk about more of these whispers, because these whispers are very important in order to understand the idea of interpolation. I am quoting here, she was making her lives, their castes, their fates, and how many brothers and sisters they had, and what childhood games they had played, and sending the stories which were spreading through the streets into the ears that need to be heard them, writing the grand narrative of the city, creating its story now that she had created its life. This idea of interpolation can be seen on the soldiers as well. Pampa Campana used her memories in order to manipulate the soldiers as well. Since the soldiers were saying that no soldiers going to war wanted to see such things, it was necessary for them to feel immortal, or at least to persuade themselves that creeping injury, agonizing wounds, and death were things that happened to other people. The same philosophy can be seen in Mahabharata as well. In the conversation between Yaksh and Yudhishthira, we see that when Yaksh asked his last question to Yudhishthira about what was the greatest wonder in life, Yudhishthira said that there are so many tragedies happening around us, but we always consider ourselves to be the invisible one, as if nothing could actually happen to us. And this same philosophy can be seen here again in Rushdie's beautiful work. And now after this, we will be talking about why and how this harmony is actually broke down. Now I will talking about the actions that Pempa Campana took and because of which the harmony actually broke down. She did three major disagreements into the city. The first thing that she did was that she abandoned three of her sons, which actually led them to civil war. And the second thing she did was very notorious, to be honest. Uh, she kind of abandons every transportation system, and this type of actions kind of lead to the harmony into lost. And the next thing that we see that the story kind of ends in the first half about the kind of way the harmony rises and then again falls, and the second part the harmony again can be seen, but this time the people are not actually remembered the kind of history they had. The people have actually forgotten, and here I will be using the historical amnesia theory by Frederick Jameson, because historical amnesia is very important in order to have a peaceful environment, because it maintains faith and it promotes solidarity among ethnicities. So we see that after people are actually manipulated, they again gain conscious about their past, and that's how the story actually evolves around. So this is my short introduction about the story, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. So thank you.
Thank you, Ritam. I've always been an admirer of Rushdie, and our next speaker is Godhuli Goswami, who is assistant professor in the Department of English at Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Government College, Kolkata. She is pursuing her doctoral studies in post-colonial African literature from the University of Calcutta, and her academic areas of interest are gender studies, post-colonial literary studies, popular culture studies, and eco-critical studies. She is also associated with the study of Spanish language and literature. She has presented papers in a number of national and international conferences, and has also published book chapters and research papers in various accredited national and international journals. The title of her paper is very interesting. The Nature's Disease. Disease, this term being made famous by Gilbert and Goober in The Mad Woman in the Attic. The interplay of language and culture in selected works of Ngugi wa Thiong'o.
Good afternoon, everyone present here. My name is Godhuli Goswami, and I will be presenting a paper whose name, which it has already been introduced, The Natives' Disease, the Interplay of Language and Culture in Selected Works of Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Now, before I go to the crux of my argument, I would just like to say that obviously due to the pressure of time, I will be compressing my points, and I would just like to convey some questions that can add to the discussion that we are already having, and hopefully I will be able to do that in this short amount of time. So the first thing that I would like to talk about is the watchwords, the keywords of this presentation that we are all attending. They are harmony and peace. My first thought when I read the watchwords or the keywords of this entire meet was that, can we have harmony and peace in a world which has inherited some violent legacies of colonialism, which has inherited certain narratives that have been very asymmetrically manufactured by the powers that be? And the answer rather, is that perhaps we can never have harmony that is absolute in its being, because one side will always have to compromise, and that side, as we all know, is never going to be the global south. It's always going to be the global north, which is going to dictate the terms of that peace accord, if we may call that. So that is one of the thoughts that kind of built the foundation of my arguments in this paper. And as is evident from the title of my paper, language is going to be one of the perspectives that I'm going to look at this, whether presence or lack of harmony or peace, as we can call it. Now, the first thing that I would like to mention is that the world that we live in is it is made up of discursive structures that are again an example of asymmetrical power, in the sense that our spatial and temporal reality, both of them have been shaped by forces that were not under our control. And what do I mean by that? It is that when we talk of space, space has been manufactured by certain powers which are now a part of the global north. And one example would be the Middle East. Actually, there is no place called the Middle East. It is just a position, a location on the world map, and it is only the middle and the east when we look at it from a particular perspective, and that perspective is the West. Otherwise, it is just Western Asia. Our time, our concept of time as we use it in everyday workings has also been manufactured by these very same powers. That is, we follow the Gregorian calendar, and we are in the 21st century according to that. Although each community has its own way of marking time, we use the AC and the AD and the BC markers, and this is just the foundation of the 21st century world, which is a very palimpsestic society. It has traces of the past that cannot be diluted, and this is the world that we have inherited. Our time and space have been manufactured by certain powers, and whether we can have real harmony in this world is a question that is very fraught with certain loaded issues. So the post-colonial milieu of the 21st century, as I've said, is an eclectic mix of heteroglossic ideas and multicultural perspectives. However, the syncretism of these diverse voices is always not a peaceful one. Rather, it is oftentimes ideologically violent, rooted as it is in an uneasy relation with the geopolitical hegemony of the global north that determines the direction of the prevalent discourse. The watchwords of the 21st century post-colonial social milieu are alterity, hybridity, difference, and othering, and undoubtedly the employment of these conceptual categories point to a pluralism of perspectives, a multitude of critical approaches of engaging with the ever-evolving palimpsestic nature of the society. The staticity of unidimensional hegemonic ideas is gradually written over by the dialectics of counter-narratives, which enables one to have faith in the formative power of productive dialogues on issues that affect societies. The most obvious truth about today's geopolitical reality is that it is a direct offshoot of the forces of the colonial past, and in order to make sense of today, we must interrogate the discursive practices of the days of yore. For close to 4.5 centuries, the expansionist aspirations of a few European countries had unleashed forces that had unformed and reformed the social, political, economic, and ecological structures of the societies that we have inherited. And I would just like to share a particular nursery rhyme that was taught in the classrooms of England in the heyday of the Victorian era, that is colonialism. And the nursery rhyme is titled ABC for Baby Patriots. As you can understand, it teaches the alphabet by glorifying the colonial enterprise. And you can understand how we have arrived at this juncture of an asymmetrical hierarchy of power. once we look at the kind of epistemic uh, control of children's minds that happened in English classrooms, and one of the things that was said for E is our empire where the sun never sets. The larger we make it, the bigger it gets. And another one, because this relates to us, is I, the alphabet I. It was taught in this manner. I is for India, our land in the east. What's notable is it's called our land, where we don't exist. It was their land, where everyone goes to shoot tigers and feast. Again, it completely excludes the lives that we had, our forefathers had. It was their land where they came to shoot and have a grand party. So this is the narrative that we have all inherited, and are we very much away from this? Is there a lot of ideological distance today? From the time that I have just mentioned, it's a very fraught answer. Now, I would just quickly like to come to the idea of Ngugi because he forms the crux of my argument, and I know I haven't got a lot of time, so I would just like to compress a few of the questions that he has raised here. Now, Ngugi, as we know, that he is an eminent Kenyan writer and academic, and he has made substantial contributions to the discourse on language and culture through his prolific body of work. Now, one of the things that I found out when I was researching for this paper is the parallels that were there between Ngugi's own life and a particular novel written by the Zimbabwean novelist Tsitsi Dangarembga, The Book of Nought. The Book of Nought was written during the Rhodesian Bush War. Basically, Zimbabwe was a settler colony, and just in 1980, very recently, it achieved its independence. But before that, there was a 10-year-long guerrilla warfare between the white Zimbabweans and the black nationalists. And in the Book of Nought, the protagonist had a sister who was fighting in the forces, for the guerrilla forces, and she herself was studying in an European school. And the same is the case with Ngugi, where his own brother was fighting in the Mau Mau rebellion, while he was, because of his excellent intellect, he was being educated in a colonial school. And there was this ideological tension between him and the other students who could not understand how to view him, whether he was a comprador elite or whether he was someone who would betray the British interest. And he talked about how language was almost like a bullet. And I have the lines with me here, but I think I would just paraphrase that, colonialism could be achieved through physical subjugation, whereas when you impose a language on a people, what you do is a spiritual subjugation of the people. So he specified this particular incident in which the students of this colonial school would be rendered criminals almost if they were caught speaking Gikuyu, which was the native Kenyan tongue, and they would be given a metal plate on which was written, "I am stupid" or "I am a donkey" for speaking Gikuyu. So Ngugi talks about how the harmony between his consciousness and the environment was broken by colonial interests at a very early age, because his own language was taken away from him. So he questions this foundational basis of colonialism that denigrates the culture of the indigenous population. And by culture, I also obviously include language, as did Ngugi. I would just like to share one particular incident. I had attended Ngugi's talk at the Victoria Memorial around 4 years ago, before COVID, and there he had talked about the reasons why he had given up writing in English and continued to write in Gikuyu. Decolonizing the Mind was his last book in English, and he talked about the fact that when he was writing in English, he gained fame because of that. But he said that he was in a tunnel where there was no light. It was only darkness, because he was constantly aware of the fact that he was using the colonizer's language. And when he started writing in Gikuyu, he finally could see the light getting bigger and brighter until the light consumed him completely. And it was then that he found his true calling, that writing in his own language would create the harmony that he has always been talking about. So he has never written in English since then, and he also changed his name from James Ngugi to Ngugi wa Thiong'o, as is known to many of you. So this anecdote and the way he had explained it had stayed with me for a long time. And I would just like to touch upon two concepts that he has talked about in his book, Something Torn and New, the African Renaissance. Now, in my paper, I had used, yes, just one more minute and I'll finish. So I had used selected works, so I had meant to talk about globalectics, Something Torn and New, and Decolonizing the Mind. So I have touched upon Decolonizing the Mind. Now from Something Torn and New, I would just like to share two concepts that he had talked about. One is linguicide and the other is linguifam. Linguicide is a phenomena, according to Ngugi, which happens, he compares it to a genocide, which is why he calls it linguicide. And I would just touch on that, and I would end my presentation. So he says that linguicide happens in the case of the African diaspora, whereas linguifam is compared to the famine of languages, which happens to the languages of the African continent. And linguicide happens when, in the African diaspora, people come in contact with European languages and the African languages die out, whereas linguifam happens in the African continent, where it is deliberately done by the British colonialists or the French colonialists and the metropolitan European powers, which deliberately marginalized the native African languages in favor of the metropolitan ones. There were so many points that I wanted to make, but I would just finish my presentation here. I just wanted to convey some important points about this particular topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Godhuli, for such a nuanced paper, and wish we had enough time in our hands. We now move on to our next speaker, next paper presenter, is Balu Guathaman. He is doing his PhD in the Department of Philosophy in Delhi University under the guidance of Dr. Aisha Gautam. His topic is philosophy as literature, a contrast of two non-argumentative traditions in philosophy. His research interests include ordinary language philosophy, phenomenology, and existentialism. He focuses on Ludwig Wittgenstein, Martin Heidegger, and Merleau-Ponty, mainly in his thesis. Sir.
So in this presentation, I would be looking at a certain appraisal of Oswald Spengler's method of analyzing cultures, looking at the strengths and weaknesses of his account, and I would look at Ludwig Wittgenstein's criticisms of him. First, I would look at his account of how cultures form, why he believes cultures should not be understood in causal terms, and how the metaphysical presuppositions of a culture cannot be absolutized. While Spengler is invaluable in understanding how cultures gradually lose their fecundity in terms of novel cultural products, he also misses the mark by seeing cultural decay as inevitable. So the perspective of Wittgenstein becomes very invaluable in correcting this like a blind spot. So Spengler believed that cultures develop unique worldviews that shape how they understand and experience reality. A culture's particular way of perceiving the world is mediated through symbolic forms and imagery that arise from within that culture. So for Spengler, understanding through similes and images is about grasping the inner meaning, spirit, or expressive significance embodied in that culture's symbols and metaphors. So this involves an intuitive, empathetic mode of comprehending culture from within. Similes and images allow one to imaginatively participate in and connect with the culture's distinctive mindset or soul. They provide an experiential, qualitative kind of understanding. So the contrasting kind of understanding Spengler talks about is causal understanding. So causal laws attempt to explain cultural phenomena through objective, empirical analysis and logical generalization. So this is an abstract, theoretical mode of understanding that seeks to identify impersonal forces, mechanisms and linear causality. Spengler believed this external causal approach cannot adequately account for the unique worldviews and symbolic forms that define culture as organic wholes. So because of this, he valued understanding through similes and images as a richer and more nuanced way of entering into and comprehending a culture's inner experience and spirit beyond what causal explanation can offer. So this is, one good thing about looking at it in this way is to see that we get a more holistic picture of what a culture considers its metaphysical absolutes. So Spengler believes that each culture has its philosophy, which is intimately related to the mythological products that the culture has generated through the process of similes and through the process of art and literature. And an affliction to a certain kind of simile can unconsciously guide our philosophical thinking and obscuring the relativity of that philosophy's origins. So this intimacy can be deliberately or non-deliberately obscured by philosophers, as it imbues that philosophy with a historicist character, which most philosophies do not want to admit. They want a more absolute kind of claim to their philosophy. So this means that there is no universal absolute metaphysical framework that applies equally to all cultures. So through this, he challenges the Western metaphysical notion of linear causality and its striving to reveal absolute truths. The Western focus on causality and metaphysical infinity emerged from within its own cultural development. It reflects culturally specific ways of thinking and not some objective metaphysical reality. So we can see that many other cultures, such as Chinese culture, like ancient Greek civilization, they did not have this metaphysical notion of causality that sees everything through in terms of causality. So by undermining causality as absolute, Spengler defies the Western philosophical tradition that takes causality as a given, and he commits heresy against this ingrained assumption. So in contrast to this, Spengler conceptualizes cultures as organisms that take shape and grow in a unified, integrated way rather than simply being a collection of disparate elements. They cannot adequately understood as the sum of abstract, isolated cultural factors linked together hypothetically. Instead, Spengler contends that there must be some holistic organizing principle or vital force that binds together the various aspects of a culture into an integrated living whole. So he uses the metaphor of the organism to suggest this unified vital essence. This cultural soul or vital force is what allows diverse cultural manifestations like art, literature, religion to cohere meaningfully as expressions of the culture's unified way of being. The cultural soul is not physical or empirically observable, and it is a metaphysical postulate about the inner dynamism that Spengler believes must exist to explain the organic unity of culture. So he says that the music and literature of a culture are closer in spirit than between music of one culture and like the music of another culture. So we might think that like the raw material of music is actually the notes or like the physical manifestation of the music, but actually he says that the actual true driving force of music lies in the culture which it evolved. So next part is Spengler draws a sharp distinction between the vitality of culture in its expansive phase, in its initial virtual phase, versus the decline into civilization, which he says as the ossification of cultural forms. So culture takes shape organically as living wholes, developing their own symbolic forms and ways of experiencing the world. In their blossoming, cultures overflow with imagination and cultural innovation across spheres like art, literature, music, and philosophy. Their productive efflorescence represents the imminent unfolding of their cultural possibility. But however, Spengler argues that cultures undergo an inevitable process of decline after this phase of efflorescence, hardening into stagnant civilization. Once a culture's creative potential wanes, it becomes sterile, merely repeating already established cultural forms. The open horizons of the culture close down as it ossifies into civilization. For Spengler, the civilization represents the old age of a culture. It is akin to a mummy or a frozen fossil that can no longer generate novel expressions of the cultural spirit. So the vibrant inner life that animated the culture in the beginning, it gives way to an increasingly mechanical reproduction of external cultural forms. So having lost their internal creative dynamism, civilizations remain fixated on relics from the cultural past than generating new possibilities. So he associates civilization with alienation from lived experience. The creative urge that inspired culture becomes transformed into abstract ideals and rigid beliefs that lose touch with their organic realities. For instance, vibrant cultural symbols become co-opted into dogmatic, religious or political ideologies. So Wittgenstein also developed a similar critique of civilization inspired by Spengler's distinction between culture and civilization. He also saw civilization as encouraging a rigid, lifeless approach to existence in contrast to the vitality of lived culture. For Wittgenstein, civilization tends to fixate on abstract theorization and generalities that are divorced from the particularities of contextual human experience. Wittgenstein believed that the tendency to fetishize abstractions could only be overcome through vigilant cultivation of an engaged, dynamic mindset ever open to present realities. Now I'll just talk about the differences with Spengler. So while Spengler's approach might seen as anti-metaphysical at first glance, it is fundamentally essentialist. He seeks to find the prime symbol of a culture, and he believed in the insularity of cultural worldviews, that one culture has an intransferable quality of race that cannot be understood by another culture. So this traditional metaphysical stance posits that once the core is discovered, there is nothing of philosophical value to be gained from any other cultural fact. So consequently, he employs essentialist language while discussing prime phenomena and destiny as the true existence mode of phenomenon. So his idea of the insularity of culture is actually contradicted by his own idea of morphological connections, or like morphological examinations, which seeks to find patterns across cultures, which seeks to like how the morphological connections can be so strong if cultures are truly insular and if there is an untransferable quality of place. And it also questions how one culture can actually understand another culture. So actually, Spengler's attempt to find prime symbols and an untransferable quality of race, it reflects the same conceptual narrowing and formulaic thinking that he attributes to civilizations. It represents a shift from the organic and holistic perspective of culture towards a simplified and schematic view of civilization. By seeking discrete symbols, Spengler demonstrates the civilizational tendency to break cultures down into their analyzed parts rather than observing their intangible essences. So Wittgenstein argued against the idea of culture insularity. He questioned how the idea of presuppositionless viewing is possible, which is the kind of viewing that Spengler said that is necessary for one culture to understand another culture, and which is only the domain of a few privileged geniuses like himself. So he believed that, Wittgenstein believed that if the tales of any culture, if told with enough heart, could help one understand the language game of that culture and thereby enter its unique space. Through playing these rudimentary games to a sufficient extent, any person from any culture can enter any other culture's unique space. So there is nothing insular about the prime symbol of a culture. And also, while they seem to agree on the dichotomy of culture and civilization, the implications they draw from this seem to be different. Civilizations grow wary and eventually becomes fearful of creative expression. Based on maintenance rather than organic propagation, civilization views creative endeavors as threats. The forms of speech inspired by culture begins to seem strange, disoriented, and rootless. So although Spengler sees this decline as inevitable and prerequisite for the creation of a new culture, Wittgenstein regards it as a call for closer examination. So Wittgenstein argues that the waning modes of expression occurring when a culture gives way to civilization, it necessitates change and a change in outlook. The memory of high culture is what prevents us from abandoning forms of expression that no longer align with the changing circumstances. And this clinging to memory causes philosophical illnesses. The memory of a lost youth and vigor hinders invigorating and attuned expressions from emerging. The crystallization of mythologies, both in social life and within oneself, obstructs change. One must not become enamored by the power of simile and extend it beyond its appropriate boundaries. So because of this, we can see that Spengler's essentialist project prevents him from recognizing the therapeutic potential of Wittgenstein's endeavor. This approach Spengler's approach revives a transcendental perspective on how history unfolds, and which leads Spengler to view the decline of a culture as inevitable as it grows towards and eventually withers away from its essence. Consequently, this outlook precludes the possibility of various therapies and multiple forms of health which are inherently related to the culture itself. So in conclusion, while Spengler provides penetrating insights into cultural morphology and the process of decay, his essentialism, cultural insularity, and metaphysical fatalism limits his approach. Wittgenstein moves towards these constraints to a more flexible language analysis that aims at revitalizing philosophy and culture. Their contrast highlights the continuing relevance of Wittgenstein's therapeutic critique. Thank you.
Thank you, Balu Gautam, for your paper. Now we move on to our next paper presenter, Jaguri Mukherjee. Jaguri Mukherjee is a state-aided college teacher at Prafulla Chandra College, Kolkata. She is pursuing her PhD from CCOM Skills University on fallen women and their men in select 19th century European novels. Jaguri did her MA from the University of Pune, where she was a gold medalist. She won a DAD scholarship in 2005 to study for a semester at Technical University Dresden, Germany. Besides her academic pursuits, Jaguri is an award-winning poet and 4 poetry collections to her name. She is the winner of Women Empowered Gifted Poet Awards 2020, the Rabindranath Tagore Literary Prize for Book Review, and the Royal International Prize for Poetry. Her creative works have been published in several venues in India and abroad, and her poetry performances have taken place in US and India, including at a Sahitya Academy Festival. Jaguri is the founder and chief executive editor of the literary journal EKL Review. And the title of her paper is Fond Lovers in a Whole New World, a study of chaos and disharmony in Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Jaguri.
Thank you, ma'am. My paper proposes to depict the representation of disharmony and chaos and the ultimate restoration of harmony in Baz Luhrmann's film. The entire film orthographically is titled William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, but I'll be using the common term as used in the text, Romeo and Juliet. It has also been called as the MTV Shakespeare. It cannot be denied that Shakespeare was included in films for a special reason, especially in the silent era. As a medium of entertainment, cinema was notorious rather than famous. They were a part of mass entertainment and popular culture. The audience gathered in music halls and fairgrounds and were fed upon the spectacular, their attention arrested by the moving pictures. The adaptation of Shakespeare's plays is believed to be an attempt to give the audience a feel of high culture, to instruct as well as to delight, and to inject a dose of respectability into the medium. The first extant Shakespeare film is more than a century old. It is Sir Herbert Beerbohm-Tree's King John, filmed at the studios of Biograph Company on the banks of the River Thames. The film originally contained 4 scenes, out of which only one, the scene of the king's death, survives. Its opening show was at Her Majesty's Theatre, London on 20 September 1899. Subsequently, the Bard's plays became subjects of around 500 silent films. After the introduction of the talkies, the sky has been the limit. We all know the first talkie, 1927, The Jazz Singer. And the first Shakespeare talkie was in 1929, The Taming of the Shrew, starring Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford. In his book, Shakespeare and Modern Popular Culture, Douglas Lanier remarks that, and I quote, "By the mid-20th century, the term popular culture has been virtually synonymous with mass entertainment." End of quote. Writing of the Bard's films, he opines, and I quote, "The promiscuous citation and mixing of styles from various periods and traditions has become contemporary Shakespeare's stylistic signature. Productions now routinely reset Shakespeare's plays in freely minded period styles and borrow iconography from high and pop cultural sources." The film, Romeo and Juliet, is set in the 20th century, and in it, chaos prevails from the very beginning. A TV newsreader recites the prologue as an announcement, and soon we see the young Montagues and Capulets in a street fight. So it is very interesting how they juxtapose Shakespeare's dialogue with the modern 20th century setup. In the scene of the street fight, for example, Benvolio says, as he is fighting with the Capulets, "And so I draw out my sword." And he takes out a gun, and it is the brand of the gun, we see the tag, which is called Longsword, 0.9 mm. Okay? So chaos prevails from the very beginning, and only when the lovers interact with each other, there is a sense of peace and harmony, as if they exist in a microcosm away from the bustle of the world around them. Leonardo DiCaprio's Romeo first sets his eyes on Claire Danes' Juliet at the Capulets' ball. All the other characters are dressed in outlandish clothes. For example, old Lord and Lady Capulet are dressed ridiculously as Antony and Cleopatra. Tybalt is the devil with black suit and red horns. Mercutio is a drag queen, and Paris is attired like a cosmonaut. Romeo is dressed as a knight, complete with a suit of armor, while Juliet is an angel in a simple white dress and white wings. And Romeo first looks at Juliet across an aquarium. He has taken a pill called Queen Mab, which he cannot hold very well. He goes to wash his face in the water, finds himself staring at an aquarium, and then he looks at Juliet's beautiful eyes pressed to the glass, shining amidst the fish and coral. Away from all the noise, devoid of glittering dress and loud makeup, the young lovers at first sight discover peace and harmony in each other. Throughout the movie, special emphasis is laid on the lovers' gaze as they continue to negotiate the world of disharmony around them. The same holds true for the wedding scene in the church. The lovers are happy and communicate their happiness with their eyes. Unlike in the text, they don't talk to each other. But Friar Lawrence, he speaks and he says, "These violent delights have violent ends. The sweetest honey is loathsome in its own deliciousness." Thus the note of doom and disharmony is apparent, and there is a portent of more chaos to come. Since it is highlights, I'll just go to the last part of my paper, coming to the death scene. The lover's eyes also speak more volumes in the chaotic death scene than any spoken language. Luhrmann deviates from the text by having Juliet wake up before Romeo dies. Romeo, grief-stricken, opens the vial of poison and prepares to drink. Juliet opens her eyes. Romeo is too absorbed in his grief to notice that she is awake, while Juliet, pleasantly drowsy after her long sleep, continues to look up at Romeo and smile at him as he takes the poison right in front of her eyes. She touches Romeo's cheeks almost immediately, and Romeo starts up in shock and drops the vial, but it is too late. The effect of this scene is extremely painful. Juliet notices the empty vial and in a flash comes to realize what has happened. Their final parting is sheer agony. Romeo dies with his eyes open, still unwilling to let her out of his sight. Juliet blows her brains out with Romeo's gun. Doesn't stab her, stab herself, unlike in the text. The lovers thus die a tortured, messy death with the terrible realization that had Romeo waited a few seconds before emptying the draught, or Juliet had given signs of life a fraction of a second sooner, their story might have had a very different ending. The epilogue is spoken by the newsreader, who asserts that the two families are now united in their grief. We see old Montague and old Capulet attend the funeral of their children together. Thus, harmony between the two warring families is restored at the end, but only at the tragic cost of the lives of young lovers who, since then, have achieved literary immortality. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jaguri. Baz Luhrmann is famous for his Shakespeare adaptations. I wish we could hear more of that paper, but you know, it's a pity that we are short of time. Our next paper presenter is Shayani Banerjee, who has completed MA in English from the Sanskrit College and University. Shayani is currently working as a visiting faculty at the Sanskrit College and University, Kolkata, and Sister Nivedita University, Newtown. Shayani's area of research interest includes intersectional marginality studies, gender studies, and cultural studies. Shayani's paper is titled A Pimple on Harmony's Face, Brutality and Benignity During Delhi Riot of 2020.
নাম কি ছিল?
Brutality and benignity এরকম কিছু একটা নাম থাকবে, বা scar on the face,
এটা তো
হ্যাঁ। Good afternoon to our honorable chair and everyone present here. Today my presentation is basically on something very debatable. All our previous speakers have been talking about the different aspects of peace and harmony. But standing in a time like this, when we have the Israel-Palestine war going on, when we have hundreds and thousands of people, especially children, dying in Gaza every day, today is very ironically the Children's Day. And all these constructs, they are basically from the global north, and they are part of the colonial hegemony that we have. It is our colonial mentality that makes us look at our everyday world in a particular way. It includes looking at violence as something which is from outside. We always tend to put one side of the story as our enemy and one side as our friend. We always tend to say that those who cause this are bohiragato, are outsiders. This common notion of tagging everyone who is involved in violence basically negates the concept that we are ridden in problems ourselves. As a country, as a society, we have a lot of scars on our face. Scroll. Yeah, I can just scroll. Okay. So, we all know that 2020, when it will be a part of our syllabus in future, when it will be a chapter just in history syllabus of books studying in school, kids studying in school, we will notice 2020 perhaps not as a year remarkable for its riots, but probably for its coronavirus pandemic and lockdown. But if we focus, the year 2020 began with a very noticeable thing going on in India. It began with the anti-CAA NRC riots, anti-CAA NRC movement. And it resulted in a lot of communal violence throughout the country. One of them is the Delhi riots. The Delhi riots, like any other riots in this world, did not take place all of a sudden. We cannot really pinpoint what caused it, but we can first look at some examples of what happened because of it. So of course you have some photos, some very few sample photos that I have gathered of properties being destroyed. You have prayer places being vandalized, 11 masjids, 5 madrasas, 1 qabristan and 1 mazar to be specific. Yes, there are certain claims that 2 temples or Hindu places of worship were also affected in this riot, but we actually do not have them mentioned in the police report that the Delhi police had submitted to the Supreme Court of India later on. We have image of 2 certain masjids, and we can see how they were burnt. And after we see all these images, I'm going to ask you a simple question. We see the vehicles burning, people crying, properties being destroyed. We see hopeless people losing their homes, their documents, their means of livelihood, their savings and everything. You can see a 10-year-old boy sitting with last remnants of what probably was his home. We see a man who has probably lost everything and also a family. And this photo, which had almost become a symbol of the Delhi riots, it had almost become a ghost that would haunt us for the rest of our lifetime. For as long as we will be alive on this planet, and as long as we will remember the year 2020, for a lot of people like us, this photo remains the image of that year, actually at least for the February month. Now, how did this all thing began? It began in different ways. Some people claim that a certain ruler, a certain leader from the ruling party of India, the right-wing party, said something very provocative on 23rd of February, which is, he said, if the people who are blocking the roads in Shaheen Bagh, they are not removed, they would take the law in their hands. Now you know that if you tell people that unless you do this and this, I will do whatever I want and I won't listen to your opinions then, even if that does not include any direct word of violence, that is basically provocating the mass, provocating the people, encouraging the violence hungry mass to go for its next adventure. Now there are also some other opinions, and there are certain scholars like Monica Arora, Sonali Chatterjee and some others. I am naming them because they are very few, very hand few, who has referred to this entire thing as an anti-Hindu propaganda by the left and certain Muslims, and they have highlighted that in those opinions in their book titled An Opinion India Report on Delhi Anti-Hindu Riots of 2020 and so on. But at the end of all the seminars, we attend all the seminars and lectures and conferences, and after all this, what remains is the truth. Truth is something very brutal. Truth is something that makes us question what we discuss in the realms of these AC chilled, comfortable couches. They make us think beyond for the people who are not as fortunate, as privileged as we are. Truth puts forward the numbers. It puts forward how around 80% of the people killed in the Delhi riots were basically from the minority community in India. And when I say minority, they are not a trivial number. They form nearly the 14% of the mainstream population of India, and still they are ostracized every day, they are othered. Now here comes in the question, who causes the violence? The people who are causing the violence, they do not belong to any religion. Just like terrorists, the mob does not have any religion, does not have any caste. It is the people. It is the people who can break or make. It is the people who, if they want, can become the savior of thousands of lives, and if they want, they can destroy the same lives in perhaps a minute just. Every day we are seeing example of that throughout the world. There are as many organizations working for peace and harmony and cultural syncretism every day. There are conferences, and there are also field workers who are doing something real life, who are reaching out to people who are suffering, and also trying to make this world a better place, if not for us, for at least the next generation. But at the same time, you have the mob who goes out of hand, who goes out of control, and believe me, be it the leader who prompted an armed mass to take up their arms in action, to show a certain population of the country who the majority was, those leaders are unaffected. None of the Hindu, Muslim, none of the right wing, left wing or any political party leaders have died. Who died, whose property was destroyed during the riots, like all other riots around the world, they are the common people. So we are being pawned against ourselves. We are being used just like the soldiers that die every day. We are every day told a myth that the soldiers are dying for us at the border. But have you ever questioned that who this us refers to? Is that us, we, people sitting in this auditorium at present, who have nothing to do with Pakistan, who have nothing to do with the borders, who have nothing to do with China directly? Is it us? Do we need to send the soldiers every day to die at the borders, or is it the policymakers of the country? The policymakers themselves of different countries whose soldiers are fighting at the war fields every day and dying in thousands and lakhs, those leaders, what are they doing? They're cherishing, they're having a good time. They're discussing policies over a cup of tea and plates of good cookies maybe. They're discussing the future of us, they're discussing the future of country members, people like us, over friendly discussions. And what are we doing? We are killing ourselves for it. And believe me, there are certain people, maybe also among us, who believe that all this is because of karma. Like, we must have done something wrong, so we are being punished. Let me ask those people, what have the 3-day-old child done who was born just in the hospital of Gaza? What did the 4-year-old child do in Delhi riot who died because a gas cylinder was burst because someone torched their house, and their house is just one room. There were 7 people sleeping in that. Please quiz me, what wrong did they do? What kind of karma they are receiving in this lifetime? Well, when I talk of riots, since my paper is titled not just the brutality but also the benignity, we have fine images as well. We have images of certain people, and this brings us to a question like, is this riot not another expression of the patriarchal power, of the patriarchal tendency of creating more violence? Because I researched for this paper for a few days, and whatever data I found, whatever instances I found of people collaborating, of people being kind to each other during the days of riot, most of them, trust me, at least 70% of them were birth assigned female people. Most of them were women. They come from different communities, different castes, different social, cultural backgrounds, but most of them are women. So this is a question for our listeners today and other participants as well. Maybe if we have a discussion session later on, we can focus on that too. Like, don't we think that the riot, the communal riot, like most other violences around us, is also a form of expression of patriarchy itself? No religion of the world ever teaches us to kill others. No religion. I myself do not believe strictly in any religious practices, but that does not stop me from admiring all the religions around the world for whatever good things they say and they propagate. No religion says that you should kill children in order to attain the Jannat or the ultimate peace. No religion says that you should harm others in order to grab away, in order to snatch away your own rights. All the religion of the world, if we go back to the original texts, they teach how we should co-inhabit, how we should live in harmony. Because as this wall says, well, this is a wall on a side note, this is a wall, real life wall from 2020 itself, when the riot was going on. This is a wall writing in Jadavpur, a certain area in Jadavpur. I had this photo in storage. বললে কথা বিরুদ্ধতায় পোড়াও তুমি রাগে ভুললে কেন মানুষ ছিলে হিন্দু হওয়ার আগে. Before we belong to any religion, before we belong to any caste, before we belong to any gender, we are first human beings. And if we stick to that, if we can focus on that, then probably we will be closer to attaining the end of harmony, peace and cultural unity. Thank you.
Our next paper presenter is Shonali Chando, who is an eminent poet, writer, reviewer from Kolkata. She pursued her post-graduation degree in English literature and language from Burdwan University. At present, she is pursuing her PhD in postmodern English language, indigenous language of India, different usages of phonetics in language from FLU, Hyderabad. Her 3 books published and running successfully in Amazon and Flipkart platform have to be mentioned. She won the Nissim International Award in 2020 for the excellence in writing for her debut travelogue, Ladakh en route, Tibetan Taboos. Over to Shonali.
Good afternoon to all the participants here and my chairperson sitting here and all the honorable ones present here. Today is such a day, a Children's Day, very special day for children, and we know that child is the face of the most symbolic face of harmony, peace and love. So here I am going to present my topic, culture and harmony from perspectives of literature, art, philosophy, social science, etc. So before discussing and elaborating the value of harmony and culture in perspectives of literature, art, philosophy and social science, here we are, all of us are from Bharatvarsha. The day when we took birth in this country, we should never forget that we are all the citizen of Bharatvarsha, that is India. India is a multicultural, multilingual, multiracial, including tribes. Is such a country. She always sheltered and enjoyed the essential unity amid all this diversity to keep her people united. After independence, narrow religion and communal feelings attracted our beloved country. The apparently mindless communal tensions and bloody riots that took place occasionally disturbed the harmony and peace of her, and that she restored since ages. Still she was disturbed for so many years and for since years and years. As a secular multilingual state, the constitution of our country gives each of its citizens the right to choose his culture, religion, philosophical dimensions, and to change it at any time according to their choice. The ancient history of Indian philosophy tells us about the harmony, amity between communities in the country, and its essential being a precondition to internal harmony of our country for progress and literary development, including philosophical and cultural development of the native people of our country. Communal harmony, what is this? What we know about communal harmony? Communal harmony is a necessity for any society to progress. It can be developed by any active involvement of social reforms, social and cultural development, including literary reforms. With nurturing of literary creativity such as art, literature, painting, sculptures, philosophy, and social reforms, a society develops by active participations. If communal harmony is to be established, people of a country should understand the values of nurturing literature, art, philosophy, culture by living as a community that totally endorses these values. Our ancient religious literatures such as the Holy Rig Veda and other Vedas, Upanishads, post-Vedic Sanskrit text documents the transition from the archaic ritualism of Veda into new religious ideas and institutions with the emergence of the central concepts of Hinduism. Whereas in order to perpetuate an atmosphere of mutual harmony, the Quran Sharif commands the Muslims in their dealings with unbelievers. It says that what the world needs today, perhaps more than an uniformity, rather to attain the religious harmony. The teachings of Islam invite people to live a peaceful life, maintaining absolute harmony based on theism, unity, and justice. Therefore, peace in Islam is an eternal constitution to them. Again, Hinduism teaches that the divine is equally present in us all, because all beings, even trees, are connected through this shared divine presence in the cosmos, and the entire universe is the divine itself. Hence, each person is intrinsically divine, and the purpose of life is to seek and realize this divinity within everything and being through gaining knowledge about it. It teaches sacrificing ourselves for the benevolence of social reforms and social cultural issues. I would like to use the word moral values, which should be gained through art, culture, literature, and socio-cultural development along with our own. Culture, art, literature, these words, not only words, these are our moral values that helps us to gain knowledge of ethics, religious aspects, literary knowledge of Indian society. Literature, on the other hand, is the primary tool to explore the past of our culture, the most influential way for us to learn the history and philosophical knowledge. In short, literature is a reflection of culture, allowing us to figure out the closer look at behavioral and social norms. We need to work on gaining sound connections between people of different backgrounds in terms of social behavior, religion, caste, creed, language, and gender, respectively. It's the most strong idea to develop cultural harmony and peace to connect with different ethnic groups, along with different cultural societies and religious aspects. It's an important tool which teaches to accept the moral, cultural, behavior ways of others. For instance, I would like to give examples of Indian socio-cultural system which always encourage its native people to maintain socio-religious harmony and peace. In Buddhism, Buddha's approach towards world peace, peace in a country or in a community is to achieve peace in the individual mind. In valedictory speech delivered by Venerable Galkande Dhammananda on the Sydney University, Australia on 31st July, what he said, peace and harmony through literature. Thirukkural is actually a universal literature. My presentation on this subject is of Thirukkural. Above said topic is showcasing harmony and peace in different fields of art, literature, philosophy, and more. According to Galkande, Thirukkural is a recital about life, what is and what should be. It is a guide to develop one's mind with the aim of making an individual a better human being who understands and loves others. To explain and explore Venerable Dhammananda's speech, it's clearly evident that through literature, harmony and peace is spread over the world from one human mind to another. Thus, it has a greater impact on spreading harmony towards the world. He also said, peace and harmony is a common topic that comes in academic forums and in international and domestic political forums. Sorry. So it is very much relevant topic today, more than ever before, since the world is moving fast towards conflicts, communal tensions, and the narrow religion politics, where war took place occasionally to disturb and distract harmony. We should be more careful in spreading harmony and peace through our rich heritage and literature, over and over again, art, and highly cultural philosophical treatises. Thank you so much.
An apology is due to Shonali. It is my duty as co-coordinator to have mentioned the title of her paper. She has done that. It was Discussion and Elaboration of the Value of Harmony and Culture in Perspectives of Art, Literature, Religion, Philosophy. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, and somewhat, Shonali's title resonates with her paper. I don't know if it is going to be a paper. I told her not to read a paper the traditional way. Let me introduce to you Professor Bhashuti Pal, who also happens to be my colleague at Maharaja Monindra Chandra College. I had told Bhashuti Di, we don't want a paper because there will be a series of papers, people will start dozing. Something the other way, it's a very unacademic, seemingly unacademic presentation because Dr. Pal has trained herself under renowned Rabindra Sangeet singer Maya Sen from her childhood, and she regularly trains in Shruti Natak from Srimati Bonani Mukherjee, who is an acclaimed figure, and she has presented a few radio dramas. Recitation is her area of interest as well. So I present Dr. Bhashuti Pal to come on the stage and make her presentation. Let this be a surprise for all of us. Thank you so much.
শুভ অপরাহ্ন। এই সভাগৃহে উপস্থিত সব সুধী মণ্ডলীকে বিলম্বিত বিজয়া এবং সবে গেল আলোকোৎসব দীপাবলির শুভেচ্ছা এবং যথাযোগ্য সম্ভাষণ জানাই। আজ আমার বক্তব্যের বিষয় পিস অ্যান্ড হারমোনি। এটাকে আমি এতজনের বক্তব্য শুনলাম এবং এত সমৃদ্ধ হলাম, আমি কোনো পার্সপেক্টিভে লিখিনি, জাস্ট আমার ব্যক্তিগত একটা আমি যে জীবনটা কাটিয়েছি সেই কাটানো জীবনের অভিজ্ঞতার ভিত্তিতে আমি একটু কিছু বলছি। তমসো মা জ্যোতির্গময়া असतो मा सद्गमया मृत्युर्मामृतगमया। ओम शांति, ओम शांति, ओम शांति। আমরা সত্য থেকে অসত্যের দিকে, অন্ধকার থেকে আলোর দিকে, আর রবীন্দ্রনাথের কথায় মৃত্যু থেকে অমৃতে যাবার সকলেই পিয়াসী। আর শান্তি আমরা কে না চাই, আমরা সবাই শান্তিকামী। মনে অশান্তি নিয়ে কি প্রাত্যহিক ব্যবহারিক জীবন চালাতে কারো ভালো লাগে? একেবারেই নয়। অশান্তিপূর্ণ চঞ্চল মন নিয়ে কোনো কাজে মন লাগে না। অতএব আমাদের প্রত্যেক দিনের ব্যবহারিক জীবনে একটা কাম অ্যান্ড কোয়াইট মন সবার আগে চাই। খুব স্বাভাবিক ভাবে একটু ভাবলেই দেখি, যুদ্ধ, দ্বন্দ্ব, হিংসা, সন্ত্রাস, পরশ্রী কাতরতা, পক্ষপাতিত্ব, অসততা, এই শব্দগুলোর বিশ্লেষণ করলে এর বিপরীত কথাগুলো যদি আমরা বলি তাহলে আসে মৈত্রী, অহিংসা, সত্য, অপরের সুখ কামনা করা। সুখবাদ অনুযায়ী যে মতবাদটা আমরা পাই দর্শনসম্মতভাবে, অন্যের সুখ কামনা করো, সর্বাধিক লোকের সর্বাধিক সুখী কাম্য। কিন্তু আমরা এত সীমিত, আমরা বিশ্বময় সুখের লোকের সুখ কামনা করতে পারি না। তাই কথাটা এসছে সর্বাধিক লোকের সর্বাধিক সুখ, at most, as much as possible by me। সহমর্মিতা, সমানুভূতি অর্থাৎ এমপ্যাথি, এগুলোই বোধহয় পারস্পরিক যদি হয় বিনিময়, তাহলেই শান্তি সুধার অমৃত কলস ভরবে। তা সে যেভাবেই হোক না কেন, দুই ব্যক্তির মধ্যে,
কয়েকজন মানুষের মধ্যে, কিছু গোষ্ঠীর মধ্যে, কিছু সম্প্রদায়ের মধ্যে, আর বৃহত্তম ক্ষেত্রে এই পৃথিবীর বিভিন্ন দেশের মধ্যে। তাই খুব সাধারণভাবে ভাবলেই বোধ করি আর পৃথকভাবে শান্তি কথাটার সংজ্ঞা দান করার কোনো প্রয়োজন নেই। আয় তবে সহচরী হাতে হাতে ধরি ধরি, নাচিবি ঘিরি ঘিরি গাহিবি গান। এই সহচরীর হাত ধরে চললে তবেই শান্তি। সরি, বিভিন্ন আঙ্গিকে আমরা যদি একচিলতে নেগোসিয়েশন করি সকলের সঙ্গে, তাহলে আমার মনে হয় বিভিন্ন লক্ষ্য পূরণ করতে সাহায্য করবে তা। আর তা কি শান্তির সূচক নয়? আসুন শান্তির বিভিন্ন প্রকার নিয়ে যদি একটু আলোচনা করি, খুবই সংক্ষিপ্ত। প্রথম হচ্ছে আধ্যাত্মিক শান্তি। কেউ নিয়মিতভাবে আমরা, কেউ অনিয়মিতভাবে আমরা তার কাছে বসি, নিজেদের আকুতি জানাই, প্রয়োজন মেটাবার কথা বলি, সবশেষে বলি কি হবে গতে বিশ্বপতে, শান্তি কোথায় আছে তোমারে দাও, আশা পুরাও তুমি এসো কাছে। তাকে পেলেই আমাদের শান্তি। পরেরটিতে আমি এসছি সম্পর্কগত শান্তি, রিলেশনাল। বিভিন্ন মানুষের মধ্যে তো অশান্তি, ঝগড়াঝাঁটি এগুলো থাকেই। হোক না পিকনিকে যাওয়া আমার এক বন্ধু একটু আমার অপ্রিয়, কিন্তু সেদিন গিয়ে যদি আমি তার সঙ্গে একটু কথা বলি, তার পাশে বসে একটু খাই, তাহলে কি একটু আপাত শান্তি মেলে না? মনটা কোথাও যেন একটা হালকা হয়। তৃতীয়টির ব্যাখ্যা করেছি আমি ইমোশনাল বা আবেগগত। শান্তি দেবার জন্য এবং পাবার জন্য আমাদের মনে রাখতে হবে তা যেন কোনো ক্রমেই আঘাতদায়ক না হয় বিপরীত মেরুর লোকটির কাছে, সেটা শারীরিকই হোক আর মানসিকই হোক। শারীরিক তো মোটেই কাম্য নয়, এমন কথা তার সঙ্গে বলবো না, তাকে বোঝাবার জন্য, সম্প্রীতি আনার জন্য এমন কোনো শব্দ উচ্চারণ করব না যেখানে তার মানসিক আঘাত ঘটে। আর সম্প্রীতির বাংলা আমি করেছি হারমোনি, আমি সম্প্রীতির করেছি তার বাংলা একটা কনসিস্টেন্সি, একটা শান্তির উল্টো পিঠ। যেন একটা পয়সার যেমন, একটি মুদ্রার যেমন দুটো পিঠ, দুটো পিঠকে না দেখতে পরে আমরা পুরো পয়সাটাকে দেখতে পারি না, আমরা জানতে পারি না। আমার মনে হয় শান্তি আর সম্প্রীতি সেই রকমভাবেই অঙ্গাঙ্গিভাবে জড়িত। আর আমার বাংলা শব্দকোষে একটু শব্দ ভাণ্ডারে একটু শব্দের একটু খামতি আছে, তাই এটাকে আমি একটু বলেছি harmony is the sound of things that go together well, people singing in harmony, attuned with each other. But friends should be in harmony most of the time if they want to be best buds. হারমোনি বলতে আমার মনে হয় একটা কোনো একটা জায়গায় একটা এগ্রিমেন্টে, একটা যুক্তিতে মেলা, এক টানে যা মেলানো হতে পারে, সেই টানটা অনুভূতির টান হতে পারে, সেটা পছন্দের টান, আবার হতে পারে সেটা অপছন্দেরও টান। এবার কিন্তু সময় এসে গেছে আমাদের দুটি শব্দের পারস্পরিক মেলবন্ধন ঘটানোর। আমরা ছোটবেলা থেকে একটি কথা আমি তো খুবই শুনেছি, সকলেই হয়তো শুনে থাকবেন, যদি শান্তি পেতে চাও তবে নিচের দিকে চাও। অর্থাৎ আমার মনে হয় যাদের অভাব, যারা নিরন্ন, যারা বস্ত্রহীন, এখানে আমি একটু কার্ল মার্কসকে কোট করব, কার্ল মার্কসের ভাষায়, যারা হ্যাভ নটস, তাদের হাতে কিছু দিয়ে যদি একটু হ্যাভসের দলভুক্ত করা যায়, তাহলে বোধহয় শান্তি সম্প্রীতি দুটোরই মেলবন্ধন ঘটে, যায় নাকি? সকলের জন্য একটু খাবার, সকলের জন্য একটু আশ্রয়, এক চিলতে বস্ত্র, পেটে একটু খাবার। আর না বলে পারছি না, বর্তমান পরিস্থিতিতে মেধা বন্টনের তানপুরা থেকে তারগুলো যদি সমানভাবে বাজে, তাহলেই তো সম্প্রীতি, সেই এক কলতান, আর সেই উৎসমুখ থেকেই শান্তির ধারা ঝরে পড়বে। সকাতরে ওই কাঁদিছে সকলে, শোনো শোনো পিতা, কহো কানে কানে, শোনাও প্রাণে প্রাণে, মঙ্গল বারতা। আমরা সকল ক্রন্দনরত মানুষের মুখে একটু বোধহয় হাসি ফোটাতে পারবো, আর সম্প্রীতিও পাবো। অন্ধকারের উৎস হতে উৎসারিত আলো, সেই তো তোমার ভালো, সকল দ্বন্দ্ব বিরোধ মাঝে জাগ্রত রে ভালো, সেই তো তোমার ভালো। এই মনোভাবটা তৈরি করতে হলে 1, 2, 3 জন নয়, সকল বিবেকবান এবং বুদ্ধিজীবী মানুষদের এগিয়ে আসতে হবে। তবেই তো আমরা গাইতে পারবো, আলো আমার আলো গো, আলো ভুবন ভরা, আলো নয়ন ধোয়া আমার, আলো হৃদয় হরা। আর এই আলোটা ঠিক টিউবলাইটের আলো নয়, এই আলো হলো শান্তি ধৌত, সম্প্রীতি স্নাত, আলোয় ভরা বিশ্বভুবন। সকলে দেহ মনে ভালো থাকবেন, আলোয় থাকবেন। সর্বে সুখিনা ভবন্তু। নমস্কার।
At the beginning, I was talking about self-interiority, self-analysis, without which we cannot really start a discourse on peace, let alone world peace. Our last speaker, I think it's a relief for you, but I would like to listen more, but whatever. Our last speaker is Dr. Shomita Mitro, guest lecturer, Hindi University, and the title of her paper is, I think, Akbar the Great, Din-e-Ilahi, a very famous Din-e-Ilahi. Thank you, Shomita, for ending our seminar session with this. Please.
শুভ অপরাহ্ন। আজকে আমি যে পেপারটি আপনাদের সামনে উপস্থাপন করতে চাইছি সেটা হচ্ছে আকবর দ্য গ্রেট, শান্তি ও সম্প্রীতির এক অসামান্য মেলবন্ধন, দিন-ই-ইলাহি। জালালউদ্দিন মোহাম্মদ আকবর ধর্মীয় নীতির ক্ষেত্রে তার সহনশীলতার উদার নীতি গ্রহণ করেছিলেন এবং তা প্রণয়নের মাধ্যমে সম্প্রীতির বার্তা এবং শান্তি প্রতিষ্ঠার দিকে উনি নজর দিয়েছিলেন। আকবরের ধর্মীয় নীতিগুলির মূল স্তম্ভই ছিল সমতা, সম্প্রীতি, দয়া এবং সহনশীলতা। তিনি সব ধর্মের সংশ্লেষণ করতে চেয়েছিলেন। তার জন্য তিনি হিন্দু ও মুসলিমদের মধ্যে একটি সম্প্রীতির লক্ষ্যে একটি বিশেষ ধর্ম বলবো না, একটা মতাদর্শ, যাকে বলতে পারি আমরা দিন ইলাহি নামে একটি মতাদর্শ তিনি প্রচার করেছিলেন। 1852 সালে তিনি নানা ধর্মের ভালো দিকগুলির ভিত্তিতে এই দিন ইলাহি খুঁজে বের করার চেষ্টা করেছিলেন। তিনি তার প্রজাদের ওপর তার ধর্মের এই নতুন যে মতাদর্শ, যাকে দিন ইলাহি বলে উনি উপস্থাপন করছেন সমাজে, তখন তা কখনোই তিনি জোর করে চাপিয়ে দেননি। দিন ইলাহি মূলত ছিল একটি সার্বজনীন বিশ্বাস। 16 শতাব্দীর শেষ ভাগে মুঘল সম্রাট আকবর কর্তৃক প্রবর্তিত একটি সমন্বিত ধর্ম। আকবর বিশ্বাস করতেন যে ধর্মীয় বিভাজন তার সাম্রাজ্যের মধ্যে দ্বন্দ্ব ও কলহের একটি প্রধান কারণ। তিনি জনগণকে একটি সাধারণ বিশ্বাসের অধীনে একত্রিত করতে চেয়েছিলেন, যা ঐক্য, শান্তি, সম্প্রীতির প্রচার করবে। সমাজে সার্বজনীন সম্প্রীতি প্রতিষ্ঠা করাই দিন ইলাহির চূড়ান্ত উদ্দেশ্য ছিল। দিন ইলাহির মূল নীতি ছিল সুলুকিকুল। সুলুকিকুলের যে সুলুকিকুলের আক্ষরিক অর্থই ছিল সার্বজনীন শান্তি ও পরম শান্তি। এটি একটি আরবি শব্দ। সম্প্রীতি, শান্তি ও বিশ্বাসের আলোচনার ক্ষেত্রে আমরা অনেক ক্ষেত্রে আকবরকে সম্রাট অশোক, গৌতম বুদ্ধ এবং মহাত্মা গান্ধীর সঙ্গে তুলনা করতে পারি। দিন ইলাহির মূল অর্থ ঈশ্বরের আদেশ, সর্বধর্মের তত্ত্ব। দিন ইলাহি প্রবর্তনের মাধ্যমে তিনি সমাজে সব ধর্মের মানুষদের এক ছাতার তলায় আনতে চেয়েছিলেন। কারণ আকবর জানতেন তৎকালীন ভারতে মূল স্তম্ভটাই ছিল রাজপুতরা, এবং রাজপুতদের এবং অন্যান্য ধর্মের সাহচর্য পেতে হলে তাকে একটি এমন মতাদর্শ সৃষ্টি করতে হতো বা সমাজে আনতে হতো যে মতাদর্শের মাধ্যমে উনি সকলের স্নেহভাজন হয়ে উঠতে পারবেন। এবং তার জন্য তিনি শান্তি এবং সম্প্রীতির বাহক স্বরূপ দিন ইলাহিকে সমাজে নিয়ে আসতে চেয়েছিলেন একটি মতাদর্শ হিসাবে। আকবর এমন একটি বিশ্বের কল্পনা করেছিলেন যেখানে বিভিন্ন ধর্মীয় পটভূমির মানুষেরা ধর্মীয় সংঘাত ও কুসংস্কার থেকে মুক্ত হয়ে শান্তি ও সম্প্রীতির সাথে একসাথে বসবাস করতে পারে। দিন ইলাহির নীতির উদ্দেশ্য ছিল ধর্মীয় অনুষঙ্গ নির্বিশেষে মানুষের মধ্যে ভ্রাতৃত্ব, ঐক্যের বোধ জাগরিত করা। সংক্ষেপে বলা যায়, দিন ইলাহি প্রণয়নের উদ্দেশ্য ছিল একটি সার্বজনীন এবং বিশ্বাস তৈরি করা যা বিভিন্ন ধর্মীয় পটভূমির মানুষের মধ্যে সহনশীলতা, সম্প্রীতি, শান্তি, বোঝাপড়া সমস্ত কিছুকে উন্নীত করে সমাজে প্রতিষ্ঠিত করবে। আকবরের দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি ছিল ধর্মীয় বিভাজন অতিক্রম করে এমন একটি সমাজ প্রতিষ্ঠা করা যেখানে সব ধর্মের মানুষরা শান্তিপূর্ণভাবে সহাবস্থান করতে পারবে। যদিও দিন ইলাহি ব্যাপকভাবে সে সময় সাড়া জাগাতে পারেনি সমাজে এবং গ্রহণযোগ্যও ছিল না। আকবরের মৃত্যুর পর শেষ পর্যন্ত এই মতাদর্শ বিলুপ্ত হয়ে যায়। তবে এটি ধর্মীয় সমন্বয়বাদের মাধ্যমে একটি সামঞ্জস্যপূর্ণ সমাজ গঠনের জন্য একজন শাসকের প্রচেষ্টার একটি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ঐতিহাসিক উদাহরণ হিসেবে আজও রয়ে গেছে। আমি সবশেষে শ্রীরাম শর্মার একটি কোটেশন দিয়ে আমার উপস্থাপনাটা শেষ করতে চাই। শ্রীরাম শর্মার একটি কোটেশন দিয়ে আমার উপস্থাপনটা শেষ করতে চাই, সেটি হলো, দিন ইলাহি ওয়াজ দ্য ক্রাউনিং এক্সপ্রেশন অব দ্য এম্পারারস ন্যাশনাল আইডলিজম। ধন্যবাদ।
So with this, we come to the end of the paper presentation, and it's a pleasure and an honor to deliver the vote of thanks. I take this opportunity to thank ISI Sir, Professor Shantinath Chattopadhyay, Dr. Sudipta Chatterjee, and Sister Nivedita University, VC Sir, Professor Dhar, and other dignitaries. And I thank all the paper presenters who have joined us from far and near. It is a true enriching session where each one of you have added to broadening my intellectual horizon. I am extremely thankful to Dr. Krishna Roy, our chairperson, and I am also thankful to Dr. Noyana De, an academic of repute and a creative writer based in Kolkata. Hope to see you all the next year. Thank you all. Dr. Roy will now, come up with her own observations.
Good afternoon, everyone. After listening all these 12 very interesting lectures, I would like to say something. Although it is not customary to say anything after vote of thanks, but I must have my responsibility to say something, because after listening all these 12 papers, the theme which attracted me most, please don't mind, there is a comparison. The paper 9th participant, paper presented by Shayoni Banerjee. Why it was so interesting to me? Because it was misspelled in the beginning. I'm not a person from psychology, I'm a person from human physiology. So man, human are by default very aggressive, and this is common emotion, and this aggressiveness is triggered by various factors. It may be communal disharmony, it may be disrespect, it may be unrequited love. There are many things. So what's the use of this seminar arrangement? To bring peace and harmony in our life. যিনি বলছিলেন ভাস্বতী পাল, সম্প্রীতি, শান্তি সম্প্রীতি মুদ্রা রেপিট ওপিট বলছিলেন। I think 3 or 4, so 10 participants are here, and of them 3 are not well versed in Bengali. Break the Sampriti means Shomopriti, that is Priti, Shabar Jonno Priti. So Shabar Jonno Priti. In this context, just remind you, I don't know whether you have gone through this particular short story written by Tolstoy, What Men Live By. There were 3 questions in that short story. What men live by? There are 3 questions. Know what is in their destiny, what do they have in their mind, that is love for everyone, and how the people, the compassion from people, society, from the family, etc. So in this seminar we have different topics surrounding literature, religion, romanticism, Buddhism, all these things. But we should be practical in this present era, and it's all kind of harmony. Shayoni's presentation triggered my emotion. She said about brutality, at the same time dignity, and he also explained how the women can act as savers. So being our own, and many of the participants are women over here, women have that particular to keep the family, to keep the society, to keep the country in a peaceful, in a very harmonious way. In this context, I also remember a great saying by Sharuda Devi, wife of Sri Ramakrishna. যদি শান্তি চাও কারুর দোষ দেখো না, দোষ দেখো নিজের, যেটা আমাদের ভাস্বতীদি খুব সুন্দর বললেন। So I am also enlightened in this seminar. Thank you everyone, and I will result in the next or in the future life. Thank you everyone.
Just announce the name of paper presenter.
Yes. Ritam Dutt.
Ritam Datto to please come forward. They have presented next.
Bajla E Hani.
Acha, Dr. Vedamani, please. Please. Next. নামটা please please and pronounce your name.
Hani.
I request Dr. Vedamani to hand over the certificate and memento on behalf of us. আরেকজন আছেন কি নাম?
Dr. Izaz Alam.
Dr. Izaz Alam to please come forward. Request Dr. Vedamani to hand over the certificate and memento to Dr. Izaz Alam. Next.
Oindrila Bhattacharya.
I request Ahmed Al Shahai, I again pronounced wrong, I think, to please come forward to hand over the certificate and memento of us to Oindrila Bhattacharya. Please stand. Next.
Dr. Shoumita Mitra.
Dr. Shoumita Mitra. I request Dr. Ahmed Al Shahar to hand over certificate and memento to Shoumita Mitra.
Shonali.
Okay, then. Next, Shonali Chando. I request Ahmed Al Shahar from Egypt to hand over the memento and certificate on behalf of World Thinkers and Writers P. Smith. Next.
Jagori Mukherjee.
I request Jonah and Tobias to both come on the dais. Both are from our friends from Germany. I request Tobias Burgard to hand Jonah. I request Tobias to hand over the certificate and memento to Dr. Mukherjee. Next.
Ayoni Banerjee.
Ayoni Banerjee to please come. I request Jonah to hand over the certificate and memento to Shayani Banerjee. All their PhD actually. Next.
Dr. Bhashwati Pal.
I request Dr. Shah to please come on dais. Bhashwati Pal. No, please wait. I request, please come Dr. Bhashwati Pal. I request Tobias to hand over the certificate and memento to Dr. Bhashwati Pal. Next.
Godhuli Goswami.
Godhuli Goswami. I request Dr. Shastri Bakri to hand over the certificate and memento to Godhuli Goswami.
Balu Guathaman.
Balu, what is
Gautaman.
I request Jonah to hand over the certificate and memento. I request the moderators of this session, Dr. Nayana De and Dr. Shutanuka Ghosh Roy, to please come on the dais. I request Tobias to hand over the certificate and memento to Dr. Nayana De. Ei Shonali ছবিটা একটু নিও একসঙ্গে. To Dr. Nayana De. আপনি ওর হাতে শুধু দিয়ে next to Dr. Shutanuka Ghosh Roy, I request Shastri Bakri to hand over the certificate and memento to Dr. Shutanuka Ghosh Roy.
Appreciation for you.
Oh, it will be when all will be finished. No one there will be there. Then someone of gatekeeper will give me the certificate.